All right, let's dive into another deep dive. This time, you guys sent over some seriously intriguing websites, and they're all about this idea of achieving what they call an awesome life.
Awesome life, huh?
Yeah, and these aren't your typical self-help sites either. We're talking practical tips, but like mixed with pop culture references, even some social commentary. It's a whole vibe.
Sounds interesting. Where are we looking?
All of this comes from a site called MoveToAwesomeLife, so get ready because we are going deep.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So move to awesome life, huh? What kind of stuff are we talking about here?
Well, right off the bat, what caught my eye was how they actually define awesome life. It's
Yeah.
not just about, feeling good or being happy. It's about actually thriving, like really thriving, even with all the craziness of the modern world.
Yeah, that's a good point. The world can feel pretty overwhelming these days.
Exactly. And they actually acknowledge that head on. They even have this visual they use, this monster character in one of their comics.
Oh, yeah, I remember seeing that.
Huh.
What was it supposed to represent again?
It's like a representation of all those things that weigh us down.
Right.
Information overload, negativity, all the social pressures. It's a lot to deal with.
Seriously, it's like they just get it.
Right. They're not sugarcoating anything. But I'm curious, like, beyond just acknowledging these challenges, how does Move to Awesome Life actually suggest we deal with all this stuff?
You know, what I find really refreshing about their approach is that they don't pretend these pressures don't exist. They actually provide, like, tools and a mindset to help you actually manage all of it.
Okay, so it's not about ignoring the problems. It's about equipping ourselves to handle them.
Exactly. It's about moving beyond just coping and actually thriving.
Yeah, I like that. And it looks like they have a ton of suggestions, like all sorts of life hacks to help us do that. But honestly, when I first looked at the site, it's a little overwhelming. There's everything from like music playlists to nutrition tips to even advice on managing difficult people.
Yeah, it can be a bit of a whirlwind. But if you look closely, there's actually a structure to it. They essentially focus on 3 core areas: physical health, mental well-being, and social strategies.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's like a three-pronged approach to achieving this awesome life. I like it.
Yeah, it's a holistic approach. They recognize that, you can't really compartmentalize your well-being. It's all connected.
That's true. So let's get into some specifics. What were some of the recommendations that jumped out at you?
Well, one thing that really caught my attention was this emphasis on what they call 1990s tech. It's all about encouraging people to engage with physical books, like actually writing journals, that kind of thing.
Interesting. That's like going back in time almost. What's the thinking behind that?
I think it's a recognition that, constant connectivity can be totally draining. It's about reclaiming control over your tech and being more intentional with it.
Okay, yeah. Especially in our world where everything's instant and digital, there's definitely something appealing about disconnecting and slowing down.
Totally. And they don't stop there. They even get into things like specific brands of tea to drink and really detailed dietary suggestions.
Hold on, specific brands of tea. I got to hear more about this. How does tea fit into the big picture?
I see it as part of their focus on mindfulness
Yeah.
and creating rituals. Like even just brewing a cup of tea, if you do it with intention, it can be a mindful moment.
I never thought of it that way.
Right. It's not just about the tea itself. It's about slowing down, taking a break, creating a little bit of peace in your day.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. It's about the ritual, not just the drink. So they're really going for that practical, actionable advice down to the specifics.
Exactly. They want to give you tools you can actually use.
Which brings me to another thing they mentioned, the spoon theory. I'll be honest, I hadn't heard of this before. What's that all about?
Oh, it's a great way to think about managing your energy. Imagine you start each day with a limited number of spoons, right? Each spoon represents a little bit of your energy.
So like every task you do costs you a certain number of spoons.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a really helpful way to visualize your daily capacity. Especially for folks with chronic illnesses or disabilities, it can be a game changer.
Wow. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. It's about being mindful of your limits and making choices about how you spend your energy.
Exactly. You gotta prioritize what matters.
And that brings me to another interesting thing about Move to Awesome Life, their use of pop culture. I mean, who expects to find, like, Red Dwarf references alongside advice on managing anxiety?
Right. It's definitely not your typical self-help approach, but it's surprisingly effective.
How so?
Well, by connecting positive emotions to familiar things, they make the advice more memorable and less preachy, you know?
Yeah, it's like sneaking veggies into a smoothie.
Exactly.
So can you give some specific examples of how they actually do that, like weave in the pop culture stuff?
Sure. They use that Red Dwarf storyline, for example, as an analogy for teamwork and problem solving.
Yeah.
And they've got these themed music playlists supposed to help you amplify or like de-amplify certain emotions.
I love that. Music is so powerful.
Right. And then they even use the Snow White music video, believe it or not, as this metaphor for overcoming negativity.
Wow, that's pretty creative. They're pulling inspiration from everywhere.
Yeah, they really are. It's all about making this whole self-improvement thing more engaging and fun.
And I think it speaks to a deeper point, too, right? It's like they're saying, hey, finding joy and inspiration doesn't have to be this super serious thing.
Totally. It's about finding what works for you and making it your own.
Okay, so we've talked about their philosophy, their approach, but they also seem to be addressing some pretty big picture stuff, right?
Oh, definitely. Like in that book, they mentioned the power of well-being. They actually quote some pretty heavy stuff right from the first page.
Like what?
Talking about pandemics, social unrest, the whole need for like a system reset. They're not shying away from the serious stuff.
Wow, so they're acknowledging that the world's got some major challenges to face.
Yeah, they are. But then they balance that out by talking about things like New Zealand's success with well-being economics and those blue zones.
Oh, right, those communities around the world with like crazy long lifespans.
Exactly. It's like they're saying, hey, things might be tough, but there are people and places out there figuring out how to live better, and we can learn from them.
I like that. It's hopeful, even with all the, doom and gloom we hear so much about.
Yeah, definitely. It's about finding that balance.
Okay, so Move to Awesome Life is tackling these big picture ideas, but let's circle back to those 1-minute life hacks for a sec. Some of those seem so practical,
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like the one about managing your phone notifications, they actually walk you through how to turn them off in settings.
That's a good one. We could all use a little less digital distraction.
Right. It's so simple, but it can make a big difference.
And it's funny because they give that tip right alongside encouraging that whole 1990s tech thing. It's like they're not anti-technology. They just want us to be more mindful about it.
Exactly. It's all about finding that balance, like we were saying.
So it's not about like throwing away your smartphone and living in a cabin in the woods. It's about finding what works for you and being intentional about your choices.
Right. And they offer a bunch of different strategies for doing that. Like they have sections on managing information overload, taking care of your physical and mental health, even prepping for emergencies.
Wow. So it's pretty comprehensive.
Yeah. It's like a whole toolkit for creating an awesome life. They've really thought of everything.
It's clear they're passionate about this stuff. But, there's one more thing about Move to Awesome Life. I want to talk about their focus on New Zealand.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. What's the deal with that? Why New Zealand?
Exactly. It seems like it's more than just a location for them. It's almost like they see New Zealand as a kind of model for awesome life.
That's a good point. They even recommend specific products from there, right?
Yeah, like those journals we talked about. And they keep bringing up The Lord of the Rings. I'm curious to explore this New Zealand connection a little deeper, see what it's all about.
Me too. Let's dive in.
So last we left off, we were starting to get into Move to Awesome Life's connection to New Zealand. What is it about New Zealand that they keep referencing?
It's almost like New Zealand represents this sort of ideal for them, like it embodies a lot of the values they're promoting.
Yeah, I get that feeling too. I mean, they even recommend specific products from there, like those journals from the awesominks.co.nz. And remember how they kept mentioning The Lord of the Rings?
Right. And it's not just a random reference either. They actually suggest pairing those physical journals with something from the Lord of the Rings franchise. Like it could be the book, the audiobook, even the movies.
Oh, I see what they're doing there. It's all connected, right? The Lord of the Rings, those journals, New Zealand. And it all ties back to their whole low-tech approach, that 1990s tech they keep talking about.
Because they're creating this whole curated experience.
It's super intentional. They want you to like curl up with a physical book, disconnect from all the digital noise, and write down your thoughts and goals in a real, handwritten journal.
Exactly. And I think it's really smart because it taps into the power of storytelling. We're naturally drawn to stories, and when you combine that with these physical objects, it creates a much more immersive experience.
I get it. It's like they're giving you a tangible way to engage with these ideas.
Right. It's not just abstract concepts anymore. It's something you can hold in your hand, something you can interact with.
Yeah.
And that makes it more real, more meaningful.
I like that. They're using storytelling, they're bringing in these physical objects. It's very holistic. So I'm curious, what are those journals like? The ones they recommend from New Zealand, are they just blank notebooks or something?
Actually, no. From what I've seen, those journals are specifically designed to help you with things like mindful reflection and goal setting.
Oh, okay, so they're more like guided journals then.
Yeah, they have prompts, exercise, that kind of thing. They're meant to walk you through the process of like clarifying your values, identifying your goals, and tracking your progress.
So it's like having a little personal growth coach built right into the journal?
Exactly. And the fact that they recommend these New Zealand-made journals, I think, speaks to their overall message. It's about simplifying, slowing down, and connecting with a more mindful way of life.
Okay, I can see that connection for sure. They've curated this whole experience around their philosophy.
Exactly. And I think it's super effective because it's not preachy or overwhelming. It's like, hey, here's some simple tools you can use to start making changes in your life.
And it's all rooted in this positive, hopeful message.
Totally. They're not just focusing on the problems, they're showcasing solutions, like those blue zones we talked about, and New Zealand's approach to well-being economics.
Right. It's like they're saying, look, even though there are a lot of challenges in the world, there are also people and places who are doing things differently, and we can learn from them.
Exactly. And those examples give us hope. They show us that things can be better. And it ties back to that question they posed in the beginning. Will you and your loved ones have awesome lives in the future?
Oh, yeah, that question really stuck with me. It makes you think long term about the kind of world we want to create.
Right. And their answer is essentially, who knows? But they encourage us to assume the answer is yes, and then work towards making it even better. It's about choosing hope over fear and taking action to create the future we want.
I love that. It's such a powerful message. Okay, so they've got this big picture vision, but let's get back to some of those 1-minute life hacks for a minute. They had some really practical tips that seem super easy to implement, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like their advice about decluttering your physical space if you're not big on apps. They point out that clutter in your environment can be just as overwhelming as digital clutter.
Oh, that's a good one. I know I definitely feel more stressed when my surroundings are messy.
Right. And it ties into their whole philosophy of creating a sense of calm and order, both in our physical and digital lives.
And it's such a simple thing to do. Just start decluttering.
Exactly. And they have tons of other practical tips too, like those specific food suggestions.
Yeah.
They're really big on getting enough omega-3s, and they even give you specific meal and beverage ideas.
Oh, yeah, they're all about that tea, aren't they?
They are. They even recommend specific brands and talk about creating those tea rituals we were discussing earlier. It's about slowing down, savoring the moment, and taking care of yourself.
Right. It's about incorporating those little moments of mindfulness throughout your day. And it's not just about tea either. They recommend things like colored glasses for managing stress and anxiety.
Oh yeah, those colored glasses. They even explain the science behind how different colors can impact your mood.
It's amazing how much detail they provide. It's
Well,
like they've tried all these things themselves and they genuinely want to share what works.
I think that's what makes their advice so relatable and believable. It doesn't feel like some guru on a mountaintop telling you how to live your life. It feels like a friend sharing tips that have actually helped them.
Exactly. And they're not afraid to be playful with their advice either. Remember that joke they made about putting one foot in front of the other and the punchline being, don't do the opposite?
Oh yeah, I loved that. It's silly, but it highlights the importance of perseverance, of just keeping going, even when things are tough.
It's about taking those small steps, one foot in front of the other, and eventually you'll get where you want to go. And I think that ties back to their whole message of resilience. It's not about avoiding the challenges, it's about learning how to coexist with them.
Right, it's about finding ways to work around those life difficulties monsters, rather than trying to defeat them head on. And they offer a range of strategies for doing just that.
It's like they're saying, hey, life is going to throw you curveballs, but you've got this. You have the inner resources and the tools to navigate those challenges.
And they really empower you to take ownership of your well-being, too. Like, remember, they're focused on creating checklists for managing things like your health, your finances, even your digital space.
Right. It's about taking proactive steps to create a life that feels balanced and fulfilling. And, it's interesting because they don't frame it as like a solo mission. They have a whole section on the importance of building a support system, or what they call finding your tribe.
Oh, yeah, that's a big part of their philosophy. And it's not just about surrounding yourself with positive people. It's about recognizing the different kinds of energy dynamics in your relationships and making conscious choices about how you engage with others.
So it's about knowing who energizes you, who maybe drains you a bit, and setting boundaries to protect your own well-being. But what I'm curious about is how they define tribe. Like, what does that actually mean in the context of Move to Awesome Life?
That's a great question. It's definitely something worth exploring further because they don't just throw that term around lightly. They provide a whole framework for understanding it.
Okay, I'm definitely intrigued. Let's unpack their concept of tribe a bit more, because it seems like it's not just about finding your people, it's about understanding the dynamics of those relationships and how they impact your overall well-being. So we're diving into Move to Awesome Life's take on tribe, right? It seems like a simple idea, but they actually give it a lot of depth.
Yeah, and one thing I appreciate is how they use those emojis to illustrate the concept. Remember those? The you saw and left people.
Oh, yeah, totally. It's like they're saying, hey, we all have different types of connections, and that's okay.
Exactly. It's not about judging or labeling people. It's about understanding the different energy dynamics in our relationships and making conscious choices about who we spend our time with.
Right. Because let's be real, some people energize us, some people, well, maybe they drain us a little.
And that's totally natural. We can't vibe with everyone all the time.
So recognizing that is part of building a healthy tribe.
For sure. They talk about how important it is to be mindful of those energy dynamics, even within our closest relationships. Like, even within our tribe, we need to set boundaries sometimes.
Okay, that makes sense. Because I think we often think of tribe as this like unconditionally supportive group, but even within those close connections, there needs to be healthy boundaries, right?
Absolutely. And they offer some great advice on navigating those tricky situations, like
Yeah.
setting clear boundaries, even having little scripts for those tough conversations.
Oh, that's a good idea. Like having a go-to phrase when you need to like politely decline something.
Exactly. It's about honoring your own needs, even within your tribe. Because, let's face it, even people we love can sometimes be a little bit, well, a little bit like those life difficulties monsters at times.
No, that's true. We all have our moments,
hmm
but it's about navigating those complexities with compassion, right?
For sure. And remembering that everyone has their own stuff going on, their own spoon budget to manage.
Yeah. It's about giving each other grace and understanding, even when things get tough.
Exactly. And that includes giving ourselves grace, too. Remember all their emphasis on self-care.
Oh, yeah, those self-care rituals, those checklists, they're all about taking ownership of your well-being, right?
Exactly. It's about recognizing that taking care of ourselves is not selfish, it's essential.
And it allows us to show up more fully for others.
Right. We can't pour from an empty cup, as they say.
So true. And it's interesting how they tie this whole idea of tribe and self-care back to that bigger picture we were talking about, like with that question.
Yeah.
Will you and your loved ones have awesome lives in the future?
Oh, yeah, that was a powerful one. It really makes you think about the kind of world we want to create.
And they don't pretend to have all the answers, right? It's
Yep.
more about like empowering us to take action and create that future.
Exactly. They encourage us to assume the answer to that question is yes, and then work towards making it even better. It's about choosing hope over fear.
I love that. It's about recognizing that we have the power to shape our own lives and to shape the world around us.
And that it's a journey, not a destination, right?
Right.
We're always learning and growing.
So true. And Move to Awesome Life gives us so many tools to help us along the way, from those 1-minute life hacks to the bigger picture stuff.
And they remind us to have fun along the way, too. Remember all those pop culture references? It's like they're saying, hey, the self-improvement stuff doesn't have to be so serious.
Totally. And they really encourage us to bring our own creativity and individuality to the process. Like with that question they asked about designing your own awesome life hack, it's about making it personal, finding what works for you.
Exactly. There's no one right way to do this. It's all about finding what resonates with you and making it your own.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Move to Awesome Life, I think what I'm taking away from all of this is that it's about taking those small steps, building those positive habits, and surrounding ourselves with people who support us.
And remembering that it's all about progress, not perfection. It's about choosing hope over fear and taking action to create the life and the world that we want to see.
Beautifully said. So to everyone listening, what's one small step you can take today to move your life in a more awesome direction? What story do you want to tell with your life? Keep putting one foot in front of the other, keep learning, keep growing, and keep moving towards that awesome life.